This episode is sponsored by Skillshare, the only learning community with thousands of classes for creators. Explore new skills, deepen existing passions, and get lost in creativity.
We're back in the Monster Lab. This is Scott Flanders, and today I'll be showing a student critique. The lesson this time was to take a few of the characters we had created in the ideation phase and spend some time developing them to really express the themes we're trying to convey and to get the shape language to read very clearly. If you want to get your work critiqued, join the premium course at proko.com/monsterlab. There are still more assignments to participate in to be a part of the video critiques. Not to mention, you will get access to a lot of exclusive lessons. Okay, now on to the critique.
Okay, cool. We're going to start with Samuel Lemons. These are pretty cool, Sam. You're really starting to, like on all these, you're really starting to understand how to communicate your form to show these different faces on the body. This is pretty sophisticated, actually, on your centipede creature over here. Definitely the feedback is less to your execution and more about your general ideas and shapes. All of these creatures here, they're neat. They're all, to my eye, they're somewhat abstract or surreal. That's not wrong, but you're going to hear me say this a lot today because I noticed this with a lot of your guys, a lot of your work. Abstract creature design is not wrong, but part of my goal for you here in this course is to help you learn how to communicate your ideas more clearly. That's really my highest priority for this course, is to help you go forward with the ability or a greater ability to say what you want to say with your shapes and your ideas. This one's called the Harvester Lab Experiment Giant. I don't necessarily get any of that. Really what I see here is something a lot more like a testicle, bro. Like this guy's like a nutsack bat. This is a nutsack bat. It really does look like a nut. But it doesn't necessarily say harvester to me. It doesn't have a harvesting of anything in particular, In some ways, I think it works better as a heart. Like if you removed these hairs, anytime you have these little hairs on a rounded, organic form. I've done it myself and been poked. I had an art director poke fun at me for, I think, a couple different ones, both my past jobs. I think I designed some nutsack monsters of my own. So you're not alone. The point is, all of these characters here, though well executed, are somewhat unclear in terms of the organization of your shapes. I hope you don't think I'm being too hard on you. I don't mean to be a dick, but here we go. Got the Death Pede. I remember this one. And all of these, I'd say, are pretty good. You got strong visual hook. Pretty simple, clear idea. We got centipede, and we got skull motifs. We got sickles or scythes. That's working pretty well. Nice perspective on that side. The Death Hydra. Komodo dragon body type. To me, this one seems like, this is a good place to do some combination stuff. Some of the kit bashing. Where you've got the skull motif you're using in these other centipedes, we should be bringing that over here into this Hydra character. At least in the central portion, or maybe down here in the chest. Oh, we like both Alec and I like these guys. The spider gorilla is pretty cool. Rhinoceros beetle gorilla, that's also pretty cool. These are good, dude. These are clear. You'll notice that the ones that are simpler combinations of variables or ideas are the ones that I'm sort of signing off on here. It's kind of for a reason. Once you get good at doing that first, can you do that? Can you operate successfully with just two variables? Can you use those? Then maybe it's time to introduce another. If you can't, then it's enough to just focus on trying to do something simple. Lab rat, okay, that's cool. I like the albino werewolf mane thing. That's interesting. That stuff like the big hump is the best part of that to me. But in general, not especially distinct from Warhammer Fantasy Skaven rat ogres. I love those guys, but so this one's like bringing together everything, almost all your ideas there, and does feel somewhat unbalanced or unclear. I'm going to offer a couple of thoughts here really quick. Okay? What about instead of a hive, we go with a heart? Like this to me looks kind of like a valve in a heart, and that's kind of interesting because you think about there was some experiment done with people growing body parts on rats. What are they doing? Anyways, that's real. That really happened. It's disgusting. But that gets me thinking that could be a somewhat adjacent idea. It's like you took a bat, a little vampire bat, which there's an association with blood, right? So you have your little bat here. What kind of bat? Well, let's make him a vampire bat because vampire bats suck blood. Why is it important they suck blood? Well, if I'm going to make a hearts pump blood, I'm finding some connective tissue there. No pun intended. Okay, we'll be real about it. Let's see, the human heart. Say anatomy of the human heart. This will help us with the naming convention stuff. I need to look up like the human heart for dummies. Okay, so the aorta, pulmonary trunk, pulmonary bat, pulmonary vampire, ventricle vampire, vena cava, atrium. That's the stuff I would be writing down, those words, finding words that might be useful, help us find the scent, so to speak. But I'm going to move on this one. I'd have to give it, like, this is actual, like, an opportunity for, like, work to actually make this something cool. But I think it could be cool, and I actually really like that idea. Because think of it, if you had bats flying through a cave, if they were these kind of mutant heart bats, they'd be, like, kind of spraying blood a little bit when they'd fly, pumping. You know, this, like, dripping. And then when they'd land, it'd be like a splat, blood. A kind of wet piece of meat. And that's really gross. That'd be really cool in a video game or a film. Yeah, it's not that this is wrong, but watch this. The size of this head is about the same size as these big Frankenstein spark plug Tesla coil kind of deals. But yeah, but this is about the same size as this here. And that means that it's we're getting a bit distracted or lost, losing focus on that head. So a couple things you could do, you could either choose to, play up size of head. It might make it too silly, do something like that. Or increase size of neck, keep size of head, but then bring the head further out from those coils. And then I'd probably not have them directly linking to the head. Makes it a little more like there's a wire, or doesn't feel right. Makes it feel like a little toy. Continue to communicate fly or insect. You might bring antenna of some kind. Or the tongue of the fly. That might be good. Show the creepy butterfly tongue. And then in terms of the electricity, I'd keep it, moving between these here on the back. Keep it, localized. Focus. As soon as I started bringing it over here, there's like too much going on. If you really want to do fly Frankenstein or fly gorilla, I think there's more blending to be done. I think the long neck in general should just go. There's nothing. Do gorillas have a long neck like that? No. Do flies have a long neck like that? No. Okay, a centipede doesn't really have a neck. Actually, centipede's legs start like right after its face. So that kind of stands out as off. Doesn't feel right. It would be better as centipede if it had little arms, right? Like people would be more likely to get it. Pause you. Again, I'd reduce the number of variables and bring it back to just fly. Maybe you can have that big hump. Big muscles of the gorilla in the neck instead of the big long neck. You can still have your big bug eyes, your big fly eyes. If you've seen the guy 1,000 Tentacles artist in Malaysia, Living the Dream, 1,000 Tentacles, he makes amazing figures, like collectible figures. And he did a series, a transformation figure called The Fly. I'll show you. That's actually where my head is at right now when I'm looking at your guy. I want to check it out for some reference. Anyways, yeah, so probably do something like that. Maybe bring the wings, but maybe the wings could be small. Maybe that's funny because he's like this big lug, to do something like that. Yeah, that's kind of fun. These are cool. This gorilla, I think there might be a He-Man character exactly like this dude. This guy, Webster. What a funny name. Webster, he's really skinny. More like a Black Widow or something, blue. More smooth, that smooth exoskeleton you see in spiders. Where your guy, you're kind of setting up this thing with the big furry gorilla like a Sasquatch, and that's pretty cool. So what kind of spider might be a nice complement to a big hairy gorilla? If we were going to choose one, that's a good theme. I'd probably go with a tarantula, right? Tarantulas have hair on them, and then that could give you some information about your patterning for your gorilla. Because there's some really interesting types of tarantulas. There's some really pretty ones. Interesting reds and orange blotches. Look at that there. That's pretty cool. It's almost like a wrestler's costume, actually, already, which would fit nice with your gorilla guy. Yeah, something like this. You get your furry arms. You get your cool pattern. Pattern can come later, but as far as actually implementing it. Yeah, something like that. Okay, but I'd repeat that idea like all around. Later on when you go to digital, and write that down here. Tarantula. Ooh, tarantulate. Tarantulate. Sounds silly. Instead of tarantula, tarantulate. terror, like terror, Chew. Lord. Yeah. Rhino guy's fun too. Yeah, and Death Hydra. Okay, I wanted to comment on this one real quick. So you got your neat skull motif you've been already kind of setting up here. And I know we want variation, but remember you can play with like different ratios with these things. So you may have a lot of skulls as like the primary focal point on the faces, like where a head would usually be on a centipede on your other characters. But maybe on your hydra, if you're trying to make it look a little more alien or weird. Initially, my thought was to put skulls like straight up at the end here. Then that kind of makes sense. That's what it sort of calls for naturally, right? Look, do something like this. Take this guy. But I'm going to show you a different way we could do it as well, in case you're not interested in that. You know, something like that. And then if you wanted to make it a little more, you know, diversified, you could have some of the heads more messed up, or like, you know, big crack in it, or fracture, or maybe one of them doesn't have the lower mandible. Or, again, really what I was thinking initially was, what if we do something like this, where we put the skull as more of a sigil or an icon in the chest? You got those big necks coming out, and that's pretty cool. And that's where people will naturally look for a face, something to connect with. But instead, you could put the head down here. Red eyes. Ooh. You know, bring your focal point down there. That could be interesting, even though it'll be in shadow. Something like that. Or maybe even on the back too. You could do a skull back here. But that could be kind of disconcerting, like you think the business end is up at the front, but then this thing could kind of turn around and move. Probably better on a scorpion type creature. Something silly like that. I think I like it better up front, but you get the idea. What you need is a face, is my point. And you need something for audience to connect with. I think it tends to be important. Maybe that's underneath those hoods, and when they could like lift up and you'd see the little face underneath. I mean, even real centipedes, like they have eyes, and they have, you know, they have their little mandibles. Even I was watching the Thor movie, and the Destroyer character, you know, he's very, it's very imposing and impersonal, but he still has eyes. This character kind of reminds me of that, all that banded armor. Okay, Sam, we're going to move on. These were pretty cool. A lot of neat ideas. You're really starting to understand how to use the two-tone way of working really effectively. I like we're using a line with it. It's pretty cool. You're like drawing in two-tone better than I do in pencil. I just think you need to challenge yourself to keep it simple. You know, if you are going to add another variable, how about just a third? And again, let's think in those ratios, like a 60, 30, 10, something like that. Something where you know, maybe the main element is the centipede part. That's the 60. The 30% is the human element, where you get a bit of that centaur, upper torso, human skull. And that last 10, maybe that's the Grim Reaper motif you have here, the death motif with the scythes, the hooks. According to the ratio, each one would get its own real estate, its own space. The majority of what I see when I look at these, the first big idea I get is centipede. Next thing is human or death, because of skull. And a skull is a really powerful motif for humans. We respond to it really quickly, powerfully, because it means, you know, a human died or is going to die. It's something we look at as a potential warning. And then that last thing, that 10%, should be something, that idea of an accent. It's like a secret sauce, or just like a bit of some special seasoning, like turmeric, you know, or saffron. You don't put too much. Or we can't have hooks everywhere. We can't have scythes everywhere. But just a couple of them help to reinforce that idea of death in the Grim Reaper.
Today's lesson is sponsored by Skillshare, an online learning community for creative people by creative people. Explore new skills, deepen existing passions, and get lost in creativity. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of ad-free classes about almost any creative skill you can imagine. Have you always wanted to dip your toes or brush into working with ink? Check out award-winning illustrator Yuko Shimizu's ink drawing technique class. Or maybe you want to make sure your photos of Fido are always looking fierce and Insta-ready. Photographer Tabitha Park's pet portrait class might be right up your alley. I've been looking into YouTube Success, script, shoot, and edit class by MKBHD. If you haven't checked out his content before, MKBHD is a tech YouTuber who reviews all the latest gadgets on the market. I'm a big fan of his videos. They're always well made. His course shares lots of insight into how he produces his YouTube content, that I'm hoping my team can incorporate into our videos. If you're interested in giving Skillshare a try, I've got some great news for you. Skillshare has a special offer just for Proko subscribers. The first 1,000 subscribers to click the link in the description will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare, so you can start exploring your creativity today.
Thank you, Samuel Lemons, and everyone else who submitted for critique. If you want to participate in the next assignment, go to proko.com/monsterlab. See you there.